Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 6th Annual Accessible Technology Symposium, and thank you for joining us. Each year, we connect to discuss current accessible technology issues and trends, as well as provide information on topics such as universal design and creating a more inclusive learning environment for everyone. Today's session is the diverse uses of assistive technology, and our speaker is Josh Anderson. Josh is the manager of clinical assistive technology at Easter Seals Crossroads, and he's the host of Assistive Technology Update, the #1 ranked assistive technology podcast. Before we start, I'd like to go over a few reminders. First, this session will be recorded and posted to our Accessitive website at a later date. Closed captions are available. The setting to enable the captions are located on the lower bottom of your screen. And the chat feature is disabled for this session. However, if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A box and the moderator will keep track of those. And now let's turn things over to Josh.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So as Sean said, and thank you so much for that nice introduction, today's presentation will be on the diverse uses of assistive technology. And we'll kind of get into what that actually means as we go through everything. So as for our agenda today, we're going to start off with just talking about who am I? And with that, just kind of maybe something that I bring in just the way that I am able to look at assistive technology because of some of the experiences that I'm lucky enough to be able to have here at work. We're going to talk about what exactly is assistive technology, and I promise we won't spend the whole time talking about that because I'm sure, especially after halfway through a week of a symposium, you may have a little bit of an idea. But then my real goal today is to really get you thinking about AT a little bit differently and maybe being able to see it kind of everywhere in life. We're going to talk a little bit about emerging tech and the future of AT and accessibility and where it might be going, some barriers to that future, and then we will also leave time at the end for questions. As Sean did say, if you do have questions, please put them in that Q&A and he will kind of ask me as time goes along. But in case we have a ton of them, I will leave some time there at the end to answer any of your questions. As for who am I? As Sean kind of said, my name is Josh Anderson. I am an ATP, which is an assistive technology professional. I work for Easter Seals Crossroads here in central Indiana. I'm also part of the INDATA project, which is our local AT Act. All states have their own assistive technology act, as you do have one there in Ohio. And INDATA is the one who manages the grant here. I manage our clinical assistive technology services, and our clinical AT team, we're the ones who are, I guess they always say, boots on the ground, the folks who are actually working with individuals, usually in a one-on-one kind of situation, to help individuals use assistive technology to work or to go to school or to just be able to live a little bit more of a productive life, be able to do the things that they want to do with the help of assistive technology. As Sean also said, I do host Assistive Technology Update, which is the #1 assistive technology podcast in the world. But before you ask, there are more than one assistive technology podcast in the world, because I usually get asked that question. But really what these things do is they give me two extremely unique lenses to look through when looking at assistive technology. I do get the up close view. I do get to see folks use assistive technology every day. I get to see unique solutions to individuals' barriers and problems solved by assistive technology in a one-on-one kind of way, and see how it can really help folks in work, in school, in life, in daily living, and in all those. But then I also get to see the kind of what they call the 30,000 foot view. So on the show, I get to talk to folks who are developing new technologies or maybe new ways to use technology. Some things that are already out, some things that are coming. And we'll talk about a lot of those during that emerging technologies part. But it really gives me two very unique ways to be able to look at assistive technology and how it works. I also used to be a job coach and a university admissions specialist. So really helping people be successful on the job, in school, and with their goals has always been something that I've really enjoyed doing. I also used to be a former indoor skydiving instructor. That has absolutely nothing to do with assistive technology, but it does make it to where no matter how great this job gets, it will always be the second coolest job I've had in my life. So let's go ahead and we'll start with what exactly is assistive technology. And we'll start off with just the definition of it. It's defined as any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. Since this is written in something by the government, it has to be extremely wordy and almost hard to understand. So that's why it has all those words in there. I would beg to argue that you can get rid of most of that and just have it say anything that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. And hopefully, as we talk about AT today, kind of where it's going, where it's been, and some of the things that can be considered assistive technology, you'll start to think of anything as assistive technology as long as it can increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. Whether you work in AT or not, whether you work in disability services or not, whether you work with folks with disabilities or not, every single thing in it needs to come down to the most important part. And I kind of just focused on the use to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities individuals with disabilities. Everything in assistive technology has to begin and end with the individual. Everyone has very unique skills, abilities, wants, needs, and barriers. And what that means is that so many times we get kind of caught up in, I'm going to help everyone with this disability by creating this technology, be that mobility impairments, cognitive impairments, vision impairments, hearing impairments. And it's going to be great. It's going to change the world because every person who has a hearing impairment is going to be able to use this technology and it'd be great. And then folks get discouraged because the first 3 people that may be tested out, it doesn't work for. Because again, you have to look at the individual. If you really think of what separates us all as individuals, it's not so much the things that we maybe see in every day or the things that we can see, but it's really a lot of times in perception and the ways that we perceive the world because of the way we've seen the world throughout our entire lives. So we really have to look at the individual when it comes to anything with assistive technology. And that'll be a theme that you'll see kind of coming up throughout this whole time. When we talk about assistive technology, what all can it help with? Well, work. Work is kind of one of the biggest ones that I'm always a huge advocate of because that's a lot of the work that we do is folks entering the world of work or wanting to enter the world of work that have some kind of barrier to it, and assistive technology can help bridge that gap. With school is probably one of the biggest ones. You're all at a university, so I'm not going to spend all day talking about accessibility for college students. But if we really think from elementary school, college, and just lifelong learning, assistive technology can really help individuals with disabilities. But truth be told, most of us have probably used some kind of assistive technology or other technology to help us with school as well. Communication is a big one. That is one part that my department and my team doesn't do very much of is the augmentative communication, or augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. And the reason we don't is just because a lot of that is actually handled by SLPs, which is speech language pathologists or folks who have a little bit more experience with actual full-on communication disorders. But if we really think about assistive technology with communications, this is captioned today. So we actually have someone trying to keep up with me talking too fast and type out the things that I'm saying so that individuals with a hearing impairment can actually see everything on the screen. Or if you're watching Netflix off to the side and would rather listen to it, you can still read those things that I'm saying. But again, it is an accommodation. It is assistive technology, and it does help with that communication. For mobility, all kinds of different things can help with mobility, from the wheelchair to, I would even say, a walker. A cane could probably be considered assistive technology because it is helping me get over that barrier and ambulate easier. Everyday living, this could go on forever, from eating, clothing, bathing, just getting out of bed, getting onto the toilet, off of the toilet, all these different things. There's different technologies that can help. And recreation. Recreation is something that's almost always forgotten when we talk about assistive technology. We always think that I want to be able to be successful at school, at work, in communicating and moving and those kind of things. But we forget that we have to have recreation. This last year has taught us anything. It's that getting out and being able to do those things that we really enjoy really is very important. And there's technology that can help with that as well. And really, I would argue that assistive technology can really help with almost any barrier. out there. Of course, there are always exceptions. Please don't put them all in the Q&A right now, but I would argue that it can help with almost anything. Now I was going to go through and actually have pictures and show you all these different things. If you have questions about what they are, you can always ask. But when I first kind of started putting this together and thinking of diverse uses of assistive technology, I want to think of what are the first things that come to mind. What are the things that maybe everyone thinks of whenever they think of assistive technology? And probably it seems like most people, if they know of assistive technology a little bit, they begin with kind of the screen readers or the CCTVs, video magnifiers, OCR, which is our devices, which is text to speech kind of programs. We start with thinking of those. Those are the ones that we might see the most or kind of have the most experience with. When I work with different job coaches and agencies, and I'll usually, before I meet with them, I'll kind of give them a survey and say assistive technology can help this group of individuals with disabilities most, and give them some different choices. And everyone says vision. Everyone thinks vision and individuals who are visually impaired or blind are the most helped by assistive technology. And while there are some great assistive technology devices out there that can help, it's not where it ends. So with screen readers, that could be JAWS, job access with speech, NVDA, other ones, built-ins and other things that allow someone to be able to access the computer non-visually. CCTVs and video magnifiers can help make print bigger, whereas OCR devices can actually read print back to us. When we're kind of talking about accessing the computer for individuals with any kind of mobility or some cognitive impairments, there's alternative access devices. If I can move my head, blink my eyes, wiggle my finger, sip and puff, do all these different kinds of things, I can access a computer, other devices, and other kinds of technology with just a whole new way of getting to it besides a mouse and a keyboard. And there's tons of those. There's joysticks, switches, key guards, just lots of different things that allow us to do that. Wheelchairs. Wheelchairs, I guess that could be considered assistive technology. I definitely consider it assistive technology. Some of them are pretty amazing in the things that they can do. But if it's probably the most recognizable piece of assistive technology, and other mobility aids. Augmentative communication devices. These can be on tablets, they can be their own standalone devices, but these help folks who are nonverbal be able to communicate. A lot of times they can even be mixed with those alternative access devices, so that if I can't physically touch or access the device, I can blink my eyes or hit a switch or do something else to be able to do that. Most of this stuff is pretty high tech. At least in the past, most of this stuff used to be pretty expensive. A lot of it still is. Some of it has definitely come down in price with consumer goods, with apps, smartphones, tablets, these kind of things, which all have places in the assistive technology space. But all of them are pretty high tech. And the list can go on and on. I could fill an entire day with it and get much more in depth. But as we think about assistive technology, I always like to go back with something my boss used to kind of always say in presentations, and that's, technology can make the world a lot easier for individuals who are able-bodied. But for individuals with disabilities, technology can make things possible. So if you really think about that, take a minute just to think of some of the technology that maybe you use every day. And one that always comes to mind and most people can relate to is voice to text to send text messages. I'm not sure, in Ohio and Indiana, they passed a hands-free law. So if you are in your car and you have your cell phone in your hand, you can be pulled over and given a fine, I believe. I don't think they can take you to jail at this point, but I do know they can give you a fine, a warning, or a fine just for having your phone. So as long as you have a Bluetooth device or Bluetooth in your car, you can say things like, hey Siri, send my wife or I apologize, say something like, hey Siri, send my wife a text, let her know I'll be home in 10 minutes, send. So I just, without touching my device, use my voice and completed that whole task. Makes life a lot easier for me. I don't have to worry about getting a ticket. I don't have to take my eyes off the road. I don't have to do really anything except for just say it and it's done. So it makes it a whole lot easier. Well, if I can't physically access a phone, if I can't physically access a computer and I can use my voice to do it, well, now it's possible. So if we really think about everything in that kind of lens, then almost any technology, high tech, low tech, no tech, as long as it meets that need and increases independence, it could be considered assistive technology. In the next few slides, I want to talk about a couple of custom built accommodations, and not because they're the best thing in the world. Um, I luckily Sean didn't say I was like the biggest expert on assistive technology, because I would argue that anyone that has to use assistive technology every day to accomplish their goals knows how to use that piece of assistive technology better than I ever will, just because of the way that they use it. But the reason I'm going to show you these is to, again, hopefully get you thinking, maybe there's other ways to accomplish these or to overcome these barriers, to accomplish these goals. Maybe there's some different things I can use to get to that goal, and I don't just have to use the off the shelf, in the box kind of thing. And also, the hardware store can be an AT wonderland. My wife hates going to the hardware store with me, mostly because unless I am going in for one exact thing, I wander around like I'm lost, but I'm not lost. And I don't want anyone to help me find what I'm looking for, because I don't really know what I'm looking for. But I'm looking at things and going, if I put that together with that, maybe I could make this. And it's really, it's where I go to think if I can't solve a problem. So let me show you just a couple of quick examples. So I'm not going to tell you anybody's names or anything to not violate their kind of rights, but this is a custom built kind of solution. And when I say custom built, it's really just adapted. So if you've ever been to a laundromat, or if you don't know what a laundromat is, they have them in TV shows sometimes. So you can check them out there, but they usually have these little carts kind of sitting there that you can throw your laundry in and stuff. You can get them from Amazon. They're about $30 to $60, depending on kind of what they're made of and everything. And this individual had a job at a store, working in wares, kind of processing things. And they had to go around and take everything with a certain color tag off the racks. It was going back, and I don't remember if it'd be purged or if it had to be changed or what exactly had to happen. Individual used a power wheelchair and would just kind of stack the garments in their lap. The main problem they had was, though, that they had to carry this rack around with them to put hangers on. And if not, they just had to put the hangers in their lap. Well, with the wheelchair and the rack, they couldn't get down the aisles. So the only job they could do was the outside racks. They couldn't go in between the racks of clothing, just because the wheelchair and that rack took up the whole thing and no customers could get by. And back in the days when we all went out shopping, if you get between someone and the items they want to look at in a store, they're not real happy and they get a little upset. So what we did was, this is almost an off-the-shelf bought device. So the only real difference between this and the way it looked before I started cutting and messing with it is the rack you see on the top where the hanger is was much, much higher. It's about 5 or 6 foot tall, so that if you're just standing there, you can hang your stuff up, put your clothes down, and do all those things together. So we lowered that down to where he could easily reach up, put the hangers up there with no issues. You can see also down where the feet are, we did cut that piece and kind of pull some things up, just so it was much easier to be able to slide the feet underneath there and not rub. And then with the things that actually connect it, it's not really pushing on the legs, although there it kind of looks like it was, because we did not want to rub any sores or anything like that while we were doing it. It's about a $50 piece, I think, completely and totally. It is reinforced with zip ties, not by choice, but by the world out there, the place that this individual worked. One day they were not at work. They didn't know what it was. They kind of put it on the sales floor for sale. 2 kids got in it, played with it, and broke the darn thing to pieces. Luckily, zip ties held it back together. So it's not perfect by any way, shape, or form. And I wish I could edit those out so I didn't have to explain that part of the story. But it does just prove that I guess even the best laid plans sometimes do kind of fall apart a little bit. But again, it's a pretty simple accommodation, but it's using something that's almost consumer made in a whole new way. Is it technology? I mean, I don't know. I guess that depends on, is technology have to be computers and high tech and things? But it is definitely something that meets a need and overcomes a barrier and allows someone to be more productive and do something they might not have been able to do without it. So I would argue it is assistive technology. So kind of along those same lines, it's a whole nother individual at a totally different store. They also had to do some different stuff with closing, but more of a, kind of putting things back that had been in a dressing room, and a bunch of other tasks. But some of it was hanging things on hangers. This individual had had a brain injury and had lost almost all movement on one side of their body. So they've got they could ambulate with the help of a walker, or with like leaning on a cart or doing something of that sort. But they had a lot of problems at work after their accident because they were not able to put things on a hanger. If you really try to put something on a hanger with one hand, it's pretty challenging. I've tried it. It's not an easy thing to do. It's very frustrating. Also, when they had to return goods or move things around, pushing a cart's very difficult when you're leaning on it with one hand. The casters that move are in the front of the cart, so you have to really make a pretty wide berth to get around anywhere. So this accommodation, a little bit more expensive than the last one just because of the cart, but it's a store-bought cart. And I've got a picture after this that'll show you the side of it a little bit more. It's a Rubbermaid cart, very heavy duty, very strong. But the important part is we move the casters to the side where you stand. That way it's much easier to turn. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's much easier to aim, much easier to turn, and a lot less trying to back up and move around. It's also put together with basically PVC and pegboard with some screws. But if you look at the place where the hanger is right there, you can put the hanger through, put one side of the garment on, and then, while you're pushing down, pull up the other side. So one-handed, you can easily put together or put things on hangers. This person, we actually ended up going to their home and doing about the same thing in their laundry room, just with the hanger part. Because they talked about how difficult it was to really be able to access it, and how much it kind of helped. So they also did have a small stool, and we talked to the employer about letting them kind of be able to sit down to do some of their work, just so they're not putting all that weight on mostly one leg for most of the day. And then here's just the rest of the cart. They did have some vision impairments, which made it kind of hard to see prices and some other small things that they really needed to access to be able to really get things in the right areas. So it does have a place for a little video magnifier so that everything's all in one place. And then the larger handle and to push the cart was much easier for them to be able to lean on and use with just one hand, especially having the casters back at that back part. So it's much easier to turn, get up and down aisles, and do all the different job tasks that they originally could do just fine, but we're having a lot of difficulty accomplishing now. The other nice thing about having the casters in the back and making it it makes it a lot harder for people who are used to using the regular carts. So people didn't steal it from this individual quite as much. Going back to kind of those and to everything in assistive technology, it really comes down to problem solving. You're faced with an issue that needs solved. If you kind of think of coming up to a large ravine or something and you need to get to the other side and you have to figure out a way. Well, there's a lot of different ways. You can climb down and swim. You can build a bridge. You can fly over it. There's tons of different ways to get there, and they all get you to the same place. But it begins and ends with that individual. What is that barrier or functional limitation? And then more importantly, how does it affect the individual? And that's, I think, where a lot of things in assistive technology can get, I don't want to say fouled up, but I guess fouled up would be the kind of the best way. When I talk to my team, be it folks that have been here forever, be it new folks, be it anything like that, I always tell them when you're writing that report and you're giving it to the university or to vocational rehabilitation or to the employer, you're the expert on assistive technology. Your words are very important and you are the expert. But when you're meeting with that individual to see what's going to work for them, they are the expert because they are the individual who will be using it. They are the individual who has experienced this barrier or functional limitation and know exactly how it affects them. So always keep the individual front of mind, and that's the most important part of any of these. But then also, after looking at how it affects the individual, what's already available or needed? I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or a story, but I think everyone in assistive technology has the story of, You go to help someone and they tell you all this different stuff that they really think they need. And in talking to the person, it's one small thing. The desk is too low and I can't get my wheelchair up underneath it. And you just can take books, wood. I've taken pieces of a pallet from the back room before, pushed it under the desk, raised it about 8 to 12 inches, and the person could do everything they needed to, because that was the barrier. There were not all these great barriers that people may see. None of them were that important. They couldn't type on the keyboard because they couldn't get close enough to the computer to access the darn thing. So it's something so simple. So is there already something available or is something else needed? Real big thing is always, you actually, the AT intervention, actually putting the stuff in places towards the end. And then of course, making sure that things work and address the need, and then starting all over if you need to. So really problem solving is a huge thing in assistive technology, but the individual is always the most important. The assistive technology we saw with those other things, is there already something readily available that meets the need? Can I go to the hardware store and find something that's going to meet the need? Or is there something high tech, a program or something that's going to meet the need? Or more than likely, are there a bunch of different things I'm going to have to put together to meet the need? Can we customize an available consumer good? Has someone already solved this problem or issue? We'll talk about much later, just the problem. One of the main problems with AT is, where do I find information if I need it? Where can I find this stuff? And if you can find other folks who do it, what have they done in the same situation? Or talk to that individual again, because while you might be helping them at work, it could easily be a barrier that's come up at home that they may have solved on their own. Can that work? Can we bring that over? Can we bring over what you do in everyday recreation or at home over into that world of work in order to get you there? So really, with assistive technology, is it an item? Is it a thing? Or is it really just an idea? Can really anything be AT if it fits the need and works for the individual? Any little piece, those pieces of plywood underneath the desk to raise it up so that I can access the keyboard and get my wheelchair underneath there. The laundry cart, just with just a few cuts that suddenly attaches into this magical basket that I can put on and use for all different kinds of things. Is everything pretty much that fits that need could be considered assistive technology? I can't talk about assistive technology without talking about accessibility. And I know the people that already presented on built-in accessibility are on here, so I'm sure as heck not going to steal any of their thunder. But if we make things accessible to everyone, then we really don't even need that much of assistive technology. We only need it for some folks to make sure they can access those things. But if everything's already accessible, it's such a smaller need. And if we could really make access as a rule, not an exception, then the need for assistive technology and these barriers will just go down significantly, and to the point where they won't be needed quite as much, which eventually would put me and my department out of a job. So I don't know if it's something I hope for, but it is something that I hope will continue, or that we will continue to see as folks make new technology, that they do make that accessible for all. And then consumer goods. So there's so many things that are just consumer goods, and I'm not going to mention them here because that's the whole next part, that really lead into emerging technologies that have amazing uses in the assistive technology space. So let me go ahead and jump right into that, the emerging technologies and their place in assistive technology. So let's go back just to something I think I've already said 2 or 3 times, but technology makes things easier for individuals without disabilities, and that same technology makes things possible for individuals with disabilities. And hopefully you'll see that even more in these next slides and these next things that we talk about. Most of the things I'm going to talk about here on the next group of things are folks that have been on the podcast, or folks that I've had the pleasure of meeting either through the podcast or through other presentations, or folks that I've got to know and see what they're doing with these amazing new technologies that whether we know it or not, we may be using every day, but they just have amazing uses for assistive technology and can really overcome a lot of barriers for individuals with disabilities. So we'll start off with artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence, if you don't know what it is, it's the bad guy to almost every 80s and 90s sci-fi movie. If you believe, so I'm trying to think, Terminator, Matrix, 2001, pretty much every movie made science fiction, if it wasn't some big giant alien or monster, artificial intelligence was the bad guy. Whether that's really what's going to happen, I suppose, you could probably argue either way. But for right now, artificial intelligence does have some amazing uses when it comes to assistive technology. So the first one I want to talk about is called Louis Voice. Louis Voice was created by a gentleman named Pramit. Pramit, I did get to interview him on the show. He would not even let me try to pronounce his last name. He said, just call me Pramit. But he created Louis Voice for the Android platform. And what it is, he was an individual who had lost his vision a little bit later in life and really had kind of a hard time accessing TalkBack, which is the screen reader on Android devices, just because everything's with swipes and taps and spins, and you have to really kind of use a lot of different things. Not everything's fully accessible. It takes a lot of work to get done what you want to get done. So he created Louis Voice, named after Louis Braille, and he created this in order to kind of make it more intuitive, where I can just tell my phone what I want, and not only could I tell it what I wanted, but it works really well with TalkBack. So it talks back to me, listens to me, asks me follow-up questions, and uses those to do things from sending messages to ordering ride shares to many other things that maybe the built-in voice assistant couldn't do, but also do it in a much more intuitive way, just to make it a whole lot easier to be able to access the phone with little to no vision. Seeing AI. If you've never used Seeing AI, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, go download it. Not right now. Just keep reading Facebook or whatever you're doing in the presentation, since I can't see anyone anymore. But please go download it. It's free. Seeing AI is made by Microsoft, which always confuses me how it's made by Microsoft, but only on Apple. I don't really know. But Seeing AI is made for folks who are blind or low vision, or for folks with a print disability that have difficulty reading hard copy text. It has different channels on there. I would demonstrate it, but I swear getting the sound to come through the phone or come through Zoom correctly sometimes causes some major issues. But basically the different channels, the first one is just short text. I just hold it over something with text on it and it reads it right back to me quickly. So this can be useful for signs, for paperwork, for mail, this is just me looking at things in my office, but really anything with print on it, it can just read right out to you. It can scan and read whole documents. It has facial recognition, so that I can have someone else in the room snap a picture and it can tell me it's a 46-year-old man looking happy. I will give you an asterisk, though, that if you do download this and you go home and you use it with friends and family, make sure that either A, they have a good sense of humor, or B, you guys are on good terms, because it misguesses that one quite often. And you do not want to show it to your wife and it guess her as a 65-year-old man frowning. So it is a little off sometimes. It always guesses me in my 50s or 60s. And before any of you ask, I'm not quite there yet. So, but Seeing AI can also read handwriting. The most amazing thing about it is that it's free. So you just have to have an iPhone or an iPad. And with that technology, devices like that used to be upwards of $3,000, $5,000 just for the reading component, not even the facial recognition and the other things that it can do. It also has color identifier, money identifier, and if I didn't say before, can read handwriting. It's one of the first things I've seen that can do that. Google has its own version of this software, and I believe it's called Lookout. And it is available for the Android platform, does about the same thing, but they're all artificial intelligence based. So they're all sending this information up. Artificial intelligence is figuring out what it is and sending that information back. There's also Otter AI. Otter AI is AI-based transcription. There's a lot of different services like this. It is not as good as a regular captionist, and I'm not just saying that because there's a regular captionist on this call. A regular captionist is going to be able, or an actual human captionist is going to be able to get more of the nuance of language. They're going to actually be hearing what that person's saying and not guessing quite as much as an artificial intelligence is. Where I've used Otter AI quite a bit is with individuals with hearing impairments who are maybe going to school and there's not captions in that class, or they're in a quick meeting with 4 other students at a table and there's not time to get an interpreter or a captionist or anything like that. So it can work in a pinch. Levox. Levox is a really fun one. It was created by an individual whose daughter had a disability and was nonverbal. And if you've ever worked with someone who's nonverbal, seen someone who's nonverbal, anything like that, a lot of them use an AAC device to communicate. Most of these are picture-based. So if I'm in this presentation, I might bring up my presentation once, and then it gives me a bunch of different choices. I choose another category, until I finally get to the words that I want in order to communicate. This can become extremely cumbersome, especially if I'm pretty good with that device and I've got a pretty big vocabulary. So it uses AI and facial recognition to guess maybe what it is I might want to say. So every day at 3:30, I get home from school and dad asks me how my day is. Well, when I go in there, the camera on my device sees dad, it knows it's 3:30, and it goes ahead and brings up those word choices for me, so I don't have to go through those. It cuts down on it. It makes communication much more fluid. It can also hear the questions that are asked of me and give me some options on there, so I'm not having to back out, go into 10 different folders to find the pictures and the words that I'm trying to convey. So it can make for much more fluid conversation. Also, there's an app coming out or has come out called Heard That. So really, really expensive hearing aids do a great job of filtering out background noise. Somehow they know that I want to hear Josh talking right now and not the other, I was going to say noises in a crowded bar, but I don't know if any of us have seen a crowded bar in over a year. But anyway, they're usually very expensive. This app is able to use your phone along with headphones and use artificial intelligence to know what it is you're trying to listen to and filter out that other noise. So using artificial intelligence can really be a great thing for individuals with disabilities. Along those same lines, there's also intelligent personal assistants, or IPAs. IPA is also a kind of beer, so don't get the two confused. They are a little bit different. So if we think of these are Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant. Hopefully all of you working from home, I didn't just activate your devices. But these things have amazing uses really for all of us. Again, back to that, things that can make our lives easier as individuals who are able-bodied can really change the lives of individuals with disabilities. So one of the people that I've been able to talk to is a place called Care Direct, and they're from England, and they integrate sensors along with these intelligent personal assistants for independent living. Some individuals with different disabilities may live in group environments or may live in apartments that have to have someone else there all the time, a family member, a friend, a caretaker, or something like that. Well, what they're doing is they're integrating these kind of store-bought devices, usually the Echo devices, and they're integrating those with different sensors and cameras so that we can know when someone opens the fridge 25 times in an evening, that maybe there's something going on, or, they haven't brushed their teeth, all these things that normally you would have a person kind of watching and helping the individual. Well, these can kind of move them along, as well as perhaps, kind of just make sure that those things are happening. Hey, and Peter, your microphone is on. There we go. Sorry, I know we all hear dogs barking in Zoom meetings, but I figured I'd let you know. Also, along with those intelligent personal assistants, there's also smart homes, and smart homes is just a huge kind of game changer. It used to be back in the day, if I wanted to control my lights, my door, pretty much anything in my house by voice, I was looking at rewiring a building. I was looking at probably needing permits, an electrician, and a decent chunk of change to be able to get any of these things to work. Now I go to my local hardware store, buy an Echo device, buy 2 or 3 different kinds of smart light bulbs, smart plugs and stuff, and I can control almost anything electrical in my house just by saying, turn on lights. Or if I can't say the word lights, I can say, turn on whatever I can say. And I can program them for that. So again, it's much less expensive, much easier. And a lot of these things work right out of the box. So you might not even need to pay for really expensive AT interventions. It might be something that a family member or friend can set up, and I can be a whole lot more independent in my home. Along with that, as we're talking about killer things from 1980s and 90s sci-fi movies, we can't talk about that without robots. So robots have a huge place in the assistive technology space. These are just some of them. There's Polly by Parrots Inc. This is a robot that actually does kind of look like a parrot. Sits on a wheelchair made mostly for folks with different neurological disorders. Think of ALS, other disorders where I may need augmented communication, as well as maybe some other uh, just kind of help doing different things. So Polly is able to do kind of like Levox. It can look around, see who's coming in the room, and bring up those different choices on my AAC device. It can identify things. It can read for me. Can also watch my eyes and see what I'm looking at. So if I'm sitting there and I look over to the glass of water, it can say, do you want to ask for a drink of water? And I can nod, blink, however I'm accessing devices, and it can actually tell me that. It can also see around corners. If you're using a power wheelchair, I might not have the motion to be able to look to the side. So it can look to the side, make sure nothing's coming down the hall at me, and other stuff like that. It has some other features. Whenever it comes out, it will probably have even more. Telepresence robots, kind of along with what we were talking about, Care Direct, they're starting to use these in different countries in some nursing homes. They look everywhere from almost kind of humanoid to like dogs and cats, but they're essentially telepresence robots, kind of along the lines of mixing different cameras with the Echo devices. There's many different kinds of these, and they can do everything from administering medication to keeping individuals social and giving them someone to talk to and kind of be around. So there's a lot of those coming out, and I'm pretty sure with everything that's happened in this last year, you're probably going to see more of those in the future. Milo is a therapy robot created by Robokind, and it is actually made to help kids with autism learn emotions and learn facial expressions and those kind of things. It is I don't want to say creepy, but it's a little creepy looking. But it does have actuators in the face that allow for smiles, for frowns, for the eyebrows to raise, for all this different stuff. And what they've found is that for some kids with autism, they can relate to Milo and learn from him much easier than when I'm sitting across the table from an actual human being trying to tell me all these things. The Jayco robotic arm looks like a giant robotic arm attaches to a table, but I can control that with the controls of my wheelchair and be able to do a lot of things that maybe I couldn't if I don't have the upper body strength for a full range of motion. Obi is an independent feeding robot with just a switch, a little push, or really I can access it with any kind of switch. I can independently feed myself. It's got a small arm, a spoon, and it will actually go down and pick up from up to 4 slots so that I don't have to have someone sitting there next to me feeding me all the time. And then robotic suits for mobility. There's lots of those in the development phase. There's always a worry with robotic suits for mobility that the military will just use them and folks with disabilities will never even actually see them. But they are working on them. There are even ones that use brain interface, so would actually be integrated so that I would just think, move right leg, and the right leg would move. Again, all levels of development on those, but still something kind of that might be coming down from different emerging technologies. I'm going to speed up just a little bit because somehow I got long-winded. So transportation, autonomous vehicles are on the way. I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a place, I think of 50 square miles in Phoenix, Arizona, that if you order a ride share, there will not be a driver. It will be an autonomous vehicle that comes and picks you up. So with that, transportation has always been a huge barrier for individuals with disabilities. I'm not sure how it is in Ohio. I'm sure that there are different things that maybe can help, but they're usually not funded as well, or maybe don't work as well as normal public transportation that everyone else uses. So the Department of Transportation, and we can all joke probably about government and forethought, decided that, hey, autonomous vehicles are coming. Let's make sure that out of the box they're accessible to everybody. So they created the DOT Inclusive Design Challenge. And this is really to ensure that when these autonomous vehicles do come out, they're accessible to all. And they're mostly looking at the rideshare kind of way, because it's believed that a lot of autonomous vehicles, when they first drop, will be in that rideshare part. So they've got all these people together from universities, companies, and manufacturers into this challenge. And even though it's one of those challenges where you come up with great ideas and you end up winning money or something like that, instead of competing against each other, they've kind of encouraged them all to work together. Like, if we're going to make this work, we all have to work together. I've had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of the different people involved in the challenge. They've had nothing but good things to say and are amazed at how much is coming out of it in order to be able to do this. So hopefully we'll be able to see that sometime in the near future. And no matter whether I use a wheelchair, I'm blind, I'm deaf, I have any other disability, I'll be able to access that vehicle just as easy as anyone else. Just a few more: 3D printing. Just because manufacturing is expensive, 3D printing's not very expensive, especially now. It's much cheaper. Can really change things. There's a company called C3D. They make 3D printed materials, maps, and other tools for individuals with vision impairments. I always use the example, try to explain a Golgi apparatus to somebody who has no usable vision. I can't even remember what a Golgi apparatus looks like, but I bet if I could feel it, maybe that would help. So, or maps, anything like that, trying to actually represent these physical things, these visual things in physical form. Prosthetech is a company, I believe, out of the University of Notre Dame. They're using machine learning with 3D printed materials to make inexpensive, accessible prosthetic hands, so that the hand is made out of 3D printed materials, so it's strong, it's easily created, as well as easily altered to be able to fit onto someone's remaining arm. But then it uses machine learning to attach to the rest of the arm, so that it knows, when I feel a movement here, I move this finger. When I feel a movement here, I move this finger, and can learn from the individual. And it's much cheaper than what's available out there right now. But limitless uses with this. You can make custom made solutions that no longer require expensive manufacturing. Some other things out there: a company called Wheelpad that makes accessible tiny homes and housing, so that if I have an injury, an illness, or an onset disability, and my bedroom's upstairs, well, I can just attach this to the back of my house, and now I have an accessible bedroom downstairs. And while they're not cheap by any means, they are probably cheaper than rebuilding your entire house. Be Adaptive Equipment makes adaptive and accessible shooting and hunting equipment for individuals with disabilities. Magical I Am is making a mobile game to help kids with dyslexia. So all these things just continue to grow and change. And with each new technological advancement, there's a way to move them into that AT space, and a way to be able to get them to help get over some of those barriers for individuals with disabilities. Speaking of barriers, there are some barriers to AT, some things that will really kind of have to be dealt with if we're ever going to be able to have full inclusion, or ever be able to have everyone have access to assistive technology. The first one is information. You just don't know what you don't know. Before I worked in as a job coach and in those kind of things, I don't think I even knew assistive technology existed. I had absolutely no idea. In fact, I was almost someone who didn't really like technology a whole heck of a lot. I would read Walden Pond every spring and dream about moving to the woods. And that was before cell phones were a big thing. After that, I couldn't wait to get to the woods where my cell phone didn't work. But then I saw how technology could really make a positive impact and a positive difference in people's lives. And well, here I am today. Information can be scattered, very hard to find. Where do I start? What's available? What can I alter? What isn't even out there? And if it isn't out there, who the heck do I talk to try to get it made? The other main barrier to AT is access. Where do I find assistive technology? Where do I find people that know about assistive technology? The cost can be astronomical sometimes. Some things are really expensive, and funding is scattered, few and far between, and sometimes not available at all. Accessibility sometimes is an afterthought. I made this great thing. It's wonderful. It's going to help the masses. It's excellent, and it's completely inaccessible to an entire, piece of the population. Um, I'm not sure where everyone is kind of coming into here from today, but in the United States, we do have the ADA. We have a lot of protections. We have a lot of things to be able to help individuals with disabilities. Across the globe, that is not the case. There's stigma, bias, discrimination, ignorance. In some places, individuals with disabilities are treated much worse than second-class citizens, I would even say. Sometimes they're treated almost like garbage, and it's really it's terrible, and it's cultural, and so you do have that in other countries as well. So that, of course, is a gigantic barrier to any of that stuff. Some very, very quick final thoughts, because again, I do want to leave some time for questions in case we do have any. I look at AT as a foundation of dreams. I told you I read Walden pretty much every spring, and probably my favorite quote from there is, "If you built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That's where they should be. Now put the foundations under them." So when I look at AT, I look at it as those foundations. I look at it, you should reach for the stars, but you got to find a ladder to get up there. So AT is the thing that can get you under there. When I worked in employment, that was always the thing. Some of the folks I worked with had disabilities that were progressive, and/or they just occurred a little bit later in life. So I would get the question, "Oh, I'm insert disability here. I've lost my vision, my hearing, my ability to walk, something. What can I do? How can I work? What kind of job can I have?" And I mean, the answer is really, what do you want to do? And then let's find a way to make that kind of happen. So really the only thing we can all do to kind of help is to find the information and spread the word, and some different just resources out there for you. Your local ATX, like I said, in data, we're the provider of the AT Act here in Indiana, but every state and territory in the United States has their own Assistive Technology Act, and their only reason for being there is to get the word out about assistive technology and to get it in the hands of individuals who can use it. The Job Access Network, or JAN, is a really great place to get information, especially if you're looking in the world of hiring, be that at a university, be that at an employer, anything like that. They have great resources, case studies, other things that can really and truly help you. The Assistive Technology Update podcast, the shameless plug, I got to throw it in there sometimes. It's not Joe Rogan or true crime, so I don't have thousands and millions of listeners. Share the successes and learn from the failures. And I only say that because there have been times that I have walked into a place, met with an individual who had a barrier. We've put AT in place, trained them on it. They were working it. Everything was going great. I come back in however long just to follow up, make sure everything's good, make sure nothing needs updated, changed, anything like that. And 2 or 3 other people in that office are using the same technology, even though they maybe either didn't have a barrier or didn't have a visible barrier that everyone knew about. The boss saw how this could really help a lot of people and maybe made it available to all of their employees. So share those successes, learn from those failures. If we don't screw up, we don't know how to do anything better. So you really got to do that. Always try to keep accessibility front of mind in everything that you do. If you're making presentations, be sure that there's alt text behind the pictures. If you're making documents, just make sure they can be read by all folks, and really just look for new solutions to all challenges. There's new technology coming out all the time, and my favorite thing to do with new technology is to look at it and go, okay, great, now how can we fit this into assistive technology and into that disability space? So whew, I talked a lot there. So we are getting close to out of time, and I don't know how many of you guys have to present since the pandemic, but it went from me being nervous to talking in front of people to me talking to myself in a room for an hour. So I'm not sure which one's worse, but hopefully you guys heard something that can kind of help, or at least again get you thinking about using everyday stuff and everything out there for assistive technology. But we got a little bit of time for questions if you guys do have any.
Great. So as we mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A tab. And Josh, we do have one right now. The question is there anything like heard that for the computer?
So not that I know of, not that I know of something that's actually going to be able to filter out the sound and give you the good sounds that you need. Now that doesn't mean that there's not going to be something in the future. It's just so many things these days are kind of becoming app based, and I think that's a cost kind of thing. I think it's cheaper to make them as apps. Plus, all of us, have us. Not all of us. There's still some people who are lucky and probably don't have a cell phone, but almost everyone has a cell phone of some kind. So I'm hoping that I mean that could definitely be something that could be out there in the very near future, though, because using artificial intelligence is not a new thing, but at the level it's used these days, it's very much a new thing. So that could easily be coming down the pipeline.
Great. Here's another question. With new technologies such as IPA, AI, et cetera, what are the opportunities or responsibilities in higher ed to continue to work and expose students to understand those technologies in order to dream, develop accessible solutions to real world problems?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I need to write an essay. That's an essay question. So expose them to it, and in exposing them to it, I think it's showing them how other people use it. So with the IPAs, for example, again, it's great that I can walk in and say, "Hey Alexa, make a fart noise," and everybody giggles and stuff, and that's really wonderful. But make them think about, if I'm an individual who has I'm trying to think, a mobility challenge, a mobility impairment. So I have a lot of trouble. It takes a lot of work for me to get up and do different things. Well, I can use a Ring doorbell and I can see who's at the door. I can unlock the door with the sound of my voice. I can do all these things. So maybe give them those kind of challenges of thinking their way out of situations, I guess, is about the best thing I can think. But that's a really great question that I'd like more time to think about.
Awesome.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. And just for others here, so people don't know about it, we do here at Miami, we have we call it MUCAT, the Miami University Center for Assistive Technology. It's over in the School of Engineering. And they actually do a competition every year where they actually have students, they design assistive technology, they give them seed money to create it. Then they actually award prizes to the best technology. It's out on the website. It's really slick. And yeah, we've actually partnered with them before our center. We've actually done a lunch and learn where they've shown the different types of some of the technology that they've created. But as you said, Josh, yeah, getting people exposed, I think is really, really important. I think that's the start is just, getting people, getting it in front of people and getting people to at least see it. Because a lot of it, right, you don't know what you don't know. So until you do that. But with that, that was the last question we had. But I want to thank you, Josh. That was awesome. We really appreciate you taking time. And for everybody on the call, I just want to thank you for attending. We hope you found the content informative and useful. Please join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Where our next session is going to be Get Your Gauges Up with Ally, because accessible content is better content. You're also going to receive an evaluation, and we ask that you complete it. We really appreciate your feedback, and it helps us plan future symposiums. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us as accessforall@miamioh.edu. Thank you again for your attendance and partnering with us to ensure access for all. We're going to end the session now. Thanks, everybody. Take care.